So Lev was not a character I had on my radar to be excited about in No Return. I don't dislike Lev by any means, but I just didn't see myself being so keen to play him with other more iconic characters in the lineup. But honestly, he is easily in my top 3 favorite characters to play, and I'm having so much fun with his playstyle. So today we're going over the ultimate Lev guide when it comes to No Return. Now, Lev has a stealthy playstyle that is mostly based around playing with the bow. Because of that, he obviously does start with the bow. He also starts with a regular pistol, and so he gets some very good weapons right off the bat, which I'm sure you guys will know will always make your earlier encounters easier when you have multiple very solid weapons. Now, his traits are that he gets the bow draw speed upgrade, he also gets an improved listen mode, and he also gets the archery upgrade branch, all of which once again suit that stealthy playstyle. Now, like I said, starting off with the bow is obviously very helpful. Lev is pretty much the only other character to start with a ranged stealth weapon other than Jesse, and so starting off being able to actually play, I guess, a stealthy playstyle from range, because obviously everyone can do it when it comes to just going up and knifing enemies, but having that range added on top of that is very, very clutch early on. Now, on top of that, he also has the ability to craft arrows right away. Everyone else, you obviously have to actually buy the arrow recipe, but for Lev, you can just do that right away, which is incredibly important. As I'm sure you guys know, arrows can sometimes be few and far between. You're only allowed to carry a maximum of 6, but being able to craft them straight away means you are obviously going to have a lot more arrows at your disposal. Now, I will say that it is worth trying to, I guess, save your resources and not craft any arrows until you can upgrade the first perk, which is in that archery upgrade branch. And this one actually lets you craft more arrows each time you craft them. So if possible, like I said, avoid making arrows in the first encounter. You want to definitely wait until you've upgraded that perk. Otherwise, you are essentially spending the same amount of resources, but you're getting one less arrow each time. So like I said, avoid that if possible. Now, Lev also starts with the improved draw speed on the bow right from the beginning as well. And this is honestly one of the best upgrades in the entire game when it comes to the weapons. And it is something you should absolutely make the most of for some very clutch stealth moments. Being able to draw so quickly allows you to avoid being spotted when you otherwise would be. And it kind of allows you to chain together some really quick kills with that bow, all the while staying completely silent. It is also worth upgrading the second and third perk in the archery upgrade branch, because that will allow you to craft explosive arrows and craft more of them too. It is super helpful if you come across any, I guess, tankier enemies or even just packs of enemies, because those explosive arrows are very, very handy. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are enjoying the video so far and you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more content coming on No Return, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, like I just mentioned, you obviously start off with the improved draw speed on the bow, so you'll already have one upgrade, but I will say it is definitely still worth upgrading the bow even further, getting the final 2 upgrades, because if you max out that bow, as well as obviously being able to craft arrows, and obviously just you have a stealthy playstyle playing as Lev anyway, you are going to maximize your potential when it comes to that stealthy gameplay, especially at range. Like I said, anyone can play stealthily if you're just crouching around and trying to knife people, but having that range, especially with a fully upgraded bow, is very, very clutch, and that is essentially the whole point of playing as Lev, having that really, really good range while still staying stealthy. Now, something else that is very solid for Lev is that his listen mode is actually improved. What this means is that you'll get to see enemies from a much further distance, as well as kind of seeing them a lot clearer. It definitely makes it a little bit easier to just plan out your attacks when you know exactly where enemies are. And like I said, that further distance does allow you to kind of just get a better grasp of where the enemies are. If you're playing a mode like Assault, for example, and there's just enemies kind of patrolling all over the map, sometimes with the other characters, you don't know where those other enemies are. You can only see maybe one that's close to you, but with Lev, you can pretty much just see everyone on the map at all times, and that is obviously very, very helpful. Now, something that I'm actually not too sure about whether this is the case or not, I don't think it is the case, but it often actually feels as though Lev has a faster sprint speed than some of the other characters in the game. Now, like I said, I don't think that is the case. I think they just all have the same sprint speed, but if I am wrong there, then I can guarantee that Lev is definitely one of the ones that has the fastest speed. The amount of times that I'm able to, I guess, slip away from enemies when they've noticed where I am and kind of just get back into a hidden location and get back into stealth, I feel like that happens way more often with Lev than it does with any other character. And so, like I said, I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is, but it does sometimes feel as though Lev actually has a faster sprint speed, and it kind of allows you to just slip away from your enemies and back into stealth. It may even just be to do with his hitbox. He is obviously smaller than most other characters, so maybe his sprint speed isn't different, but maybe you are actually able to kind of avoid the line of sight of the enemies a little bit easier. Whether any of that is true, I don't know, but that is just something I've definitely noticed when I'm playing as Lev. It is very clutch if any of that is actually the case, and it does make it feel a lot more bearable playing modes like Hunted, for example. I feel like I just get away with him so much easier than I do with other characters, especially characters like Joel, for example, who he does just feel a little bit slower and more sluggish to me. But again, I don't actually have any of the stats on whether that is true or not, so take all of that with a grain of salt. Now, the one downside for me personally when it comes to playing as Lev is just the way that he handles bosses. I do think that Lev kind of struggles a little bit against the bosses just due to his playstyle. It obviously depends who you are fighting as the final boss in your runs. For example, the Rattler Captain, that I guess boss fight is actually really useful if you're playing stealthily, because there are a lot of enemies out there and it obviously helps to be stealthy, kind of take them all out, and then you can just 1v1 the Rattler Captain. But for example, against any of the bloaters, and I haven't played Lev against the Rat King, but I'm fairly sure it would be the same, he definitely seems as though he struggles against those type of characters, the more tanky characters where stealth isn't really an option. You can't really hide against those bloaters because they kind of just always know your location, and the arenas that you're fighting in those boss fights are obviously a lot smaller with many less places to hide. So I do feel as though Lev can kind of struggle against bosses. Like I said, it kind of depends which ones you're playing. I have beaten a few bosses as Lev, but every single time I've gone up against the bloaters, I just get absolutely deleted. I do feel like his explosive arrows are pretty decent against those type of bosses, but obviously you can only carry, I think, 4 of those, and once you're out of them, you are definitely going to struggle because most of the other stuff you have in your equipment is obviously not going to be that strong against bosses unless you've really, I guess, set yourself up through that run to focus on the boss. So just keep that in mind. He does feel like he struggles a little bit against bosses compared to some of the other characters. But that being said, if you plan correctly, then you can definitely avoid that being an issue by carrying, you know, shotguns and all those sorts of things that'll help against those big bosses. Overall though, I do think Lev is a really good character. He is honestly one of my favorite to play, and I do think he might be one of the easiest, if not the single easiest to get the hang of. Not necessarily saying he's the easiest to play, but just the easiest one to initially learn, pretty much just because you can play it really slow in sort of stealth mode. There is much less risk involved in it, and so I do think anyone who's struggling with No Return will probably do fairly well with Lev, simply because you can play a lot slower. But anyway guys, that is it for some of the best tips and tricks when it comes to playing as Lev. I'm keen to hear any other tips that you guys have, so be sure to leave them down in the comments. And on top of that, keep your eyes peeled for all of the other character guides coming out on the channel. There are already some live as well, so be sure to check those out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.